Good morning, boys and girls. Today I'm going to read you a story about Lass. Lass was a sheepdog, but she didn't start out as a very friendly dog. Let's find out what happened. Mr. Keller had seen an ad in the newspaper that said, "Wanted, a good country home for purebred border collie. Chases cars and bicycles." So he knew he had a problem, but he needed a sheepdog. We pick up the story when Mr. Keller goes to pick up the dog, and he finds the dog chained to the ground. A big chain ran from his collar to the ground, and also from his collar to the back foot of the dog. "How old is Lassie?" Mr. Keller asked. "She is 2 years old and crazy," the owner answered. "She was such a good little puppy when I got her. I don't know what went wrong with her. Nobody wants her. I have to keep her chained to her doghouse all the time. If you don't take her, she'll have to be put to sleep." So Mr. Keller put the dog in the back seat of his car. Carefully, Mr. Keller removed the heavy chain and placed a new soft collar around Lassie's neck. She cringed and growled every time his hands touched her. As they were driving back to the ranch, Mr. Keller spoke in a soft, low voice to the dog. "Now that you are starting a new life, I'm going to give you a new name. How does Lass sound to you? It goes well with your Scottish blood." Mr. Keller knew that the border collie breed had first started in the border region between England and Scotland. He reached behind him where Lass lay. He tried to pet her, but she only growled and showed her teeth. "It will take time to win the trust of this poor dog," Mr. Keller said to himself. Back at Fairwinds, Mr. Keller fastened Lass's soft leash near the new doghouse. Mrs. Keller had a bowl of delicious food and fresh, clean water waiting for the new dog, but Lass would not touch any of it. She just stared at them in anger. Day after day, she refused to eat or drink. Soon she began to lose weight. After a week, Mr. Keller said to his wife, "I'm going to take Lass off the leash and set her free to prove that I can trust her. She won't be forced. She has to come to us because she chooses to." As soon as the leash was removed, Lass took off like a flash and disappeared into the forest. Anxiously, the Kellers waited for Lass to return. After several days, Mr. Keller checked with other ranchers in the neighborhood, but no one had seen the dog. He searched up and down the country roads, but he didn't find her. Lass seemed to have disappeared into the salty ocean air. Sadly, Mr. Keller returned to the ranch. He wondered, what now? Who would help him raise his sheep? One evening, Mr. Keller was busy in the yard. He noticed something moving on top of the large rocks behind the house. There was Lass, crouching like a cougar, staring down at him. But she was still not ready to trust her new owner. When Mr. Keller called her name, she turned and fled back into the forest. He felt sorry for her. "Maybe if I place some food up on the rocks, she'll understand that I love her," Mr. Keller thought. Every evening, he took food and water up to the rock. When he checked in the morning, they were gone. As Lass ate the food, she began to gain weight, but still she would have nothing to do with Mr. Keller. As the weeks went by, Lass came to the rocks more often. One day, some ewes came with their lambs and were grazing near her lookout. Suddenly, Lass sat up on her hind legs. She tilted her head and watched the sheep very closely. Are her instincts finally coming alive? Mr. Keller wondered hopefully. He felt sorry for Lass. He really wanted to become friends with her. Every evening, Mr. Keller began to take a few sheep to graze near the dog's lookout. He hoped that Lass would get interested in them, but she stayed away. Many days passed. The time was nearing when Mr. Keller would have to take Lass back to her previous owner to be put to sleep, unless the dog began to respond. Then, one quiet evening, Mr. Keller was watching his sheep near the shore. A gentle breeze floated up from the water. While the sheep peacefully munched grass, Mr. Keller enjoyed the colorful sunset. Suddenly, without warning, Mr. Keller felt a soft, warm nose touching his hand. His heart almost skipped a beat. Was it possible? He could barely look for fear of driving Lass away again. She had finally come by her own choosing. She was finally responding to all the love and attention he had shown her. She had found the courage to make a new start, to put her trust in her new master. Lass was content to let him pet her gently. Mr. Keller was very happy. His heart was bursting with joy. A friendship had begun. Everything would turn out all right. Do you think God loves us like Mr. Keller loved Lass? Think about that.